Good morning. So for the second video in the Garten recipe series, we're testing out 6 different recipes, 1 per video. There are a couple videos where I'm doing multiple recipes. The next video will actually have 2 of her recipes. So for today's video, we're going to try her chocolate cake recipe. Her chocolate cake recipe is in this book here. I'll check the page in a second for you, but that's what we're doing in today's video. So this is the recipe. It is on page 165. It looks delicious. We're going to try it. So if you want to follow along, this is the recipe. I also will link it from Pinterest. I found it on Pinterest for you guys, and I'll link it in the description box if you want to follow along. Okay. So I've thoroughly read the recipe, and we're going to try and follow this as close as possible. So I have 2 different bowls because she wants me to put the dry in the mixing bowl and the wet in here so we can slowly add them together, how cakes are usually traditionally made. So before I start this, I wanted to give, if anybody hasn't watched the first video in this 6 video series, I'm going to insert a picture up here, and these are the cookbooks that I'm going to be using the recipes out of. So just so you know that. Okay, so let's get ready and start measuring out the dry ingredients. So we need 1 3/4 cups of flour. I'm really curious to see how this is going to turn out. We're also going to be making her chocolate frosting recipe that goes with this. Her chocolate frosting recipe is interesting. It takes a raw egg yolk that I've never heard of that before in icing, so we're going to try it. And 2 cups of sugar. I have all my ingredients out here, so it's easier. I don't have to go back and forth. This is a 1/2 cup measure. I have been looking forward to making a chocolate cake recipe for you guys. So when I seen that she had a chocolate cake recipe in one of her cookbooks, I figured it was the perfect opportunity. Okay, cocoa powder, 3/4 cup of cocoa powder. Let me see here. Trying to find some of my measuring spoons here, or measuring cups. Oh, there we go. Just so, oh, it doesn't fit. Okay, we'll use the 1/4 because it's a little bit, I think it's supposed to be in this can already. I usually have one in most of my things. So this is a 1/4 cup, so we just need 3 of these. It's 1/2 cup. I think this is going to be extremely chocolatey. The icing, like the frosting recipe, I think it's going to be super chocolatey because it has cocoa powder and chocolate in it. So I think it's going to be interesting. So we will see. So I'm just going to sift this. And then we need to put the baking powder and the salt in here too. I'm trying to make her recipes in this series as close as possible. I'm only changing it if I don't have certain things or certain equipment, stuff like that. I probably should have worn an apron. I'm really bad for remembering to put on my aprons. So just sift all the cocoa powder here. So this also, she says to use 2 8-inch round cake pans. I mean, if you have only square, that's fine. I'm gonna have to see which ones I can use. I have a few different ones, but we'll see which ones I can use. She says in the recipe that if you have 9-inch pans and they are a little bit more shallow, you can use 9-inch pans. I think mine might be a little bigger. We'll see. Okay, baking powder. We need 1 teaspoon. This is from reviews that I've seen other people trying this recipe. It's rich and moist chocolate cake, so isn't that the best kind? Salt, 1 teaspoon as well. Salt. Okay, now we can set this aside, put it on the mixer here, and then we're gonna measure out the wet ingredients. So we have buttermilk. Let me just check the recipe here to see if the coffee that I'm supposed to put in this recipe needs to go in with the wet ingredients. No, it goes in very last, so it doesn't get mixed with this. Okay, so let's put in the eggs. Let's do the eggs first. So we need 2 room temperature eggs. Okay. 1 teaspoon of vanilla. I'm going to do this exact, just so that we know how it tastes. I do like to add extra, but we'll do it exactly like the recipe for today. 1 teaspoon. Buttermilk. I need to get my cup out. I should have just left it out. Okay. She says to shake the buttermilk first. Okay. So 1 cup. I find that whenever I make a chocolate cake recipe and it has buttermilk in it, it's usually pretty good. So she calls for vegetable oil. I don't use vegetable oil ever, so we're going to use olive oil. 1/2 cup. I bet you this adds a lot of moisture to this cake. Okay, so now we just need to whisk this together. I just want to make sure I got all of the wet ingredients here. All of it but the coffee. Okay. Let's get a whisk. And we'll whisk this together. I've already preheated my oven to 350. This cake needs to be cooked on 350. Okay, so now we need to slowly add the wet into the dry. And she says to do it on low. So I just want to mix those up a little bit, the dry ingredients here. And we'll slowly start mixing it in. I'm doing it very slowly here. Okay. And then we take 1 cup of freshly brewed coffee. I am not a coffee drinker, so this is probably really strong, but we'll see. Okay, so there is a bunch on the bottom here that is not mixing, so I'm going to mix that up here. I'll give you a look. You can see all of the flour that's right on the very bottom. I find with stand mixers like this, there's always a spot right on the very bottom that it doesn't mix quite right. So I like to just scrape it and make sure it's all even. Okay, so let's mix that up a little bit before we add the coffee. Some right here on the side. So I want to make sure it's all done. Oh, this smells so chocolatey. We don't even have all the ingredients in it yet. Okay, give it one more mix. You don't want to overmix. Okay, and then it says to add the 1 cup of freshly brewed coffee. Just let that incorporate a little here. I just want to get the stuff off the sides here so it mixes nice. This looks pretty good. I was a little worried the coffee was going to make it a little too runny, but so far it looks okay. There's some really thick spots on the bottom here that aren't mixing in, so. Okay, let's try that. Mix the rest of the coffee in here. I think this is going to be so good. Okay, let me just make sure the bottom is all mixed. Yes, it feels nice. Okay, so let's go and spray the pans that we need. I gotta go see which kind I have here. And then we'll put this in the pan. Okay, so I wanted to follow this recipe as close as possible, and I only have 9-inch round pans, so I decided to use my 8-inch square pans. I already sprayed them with some cooking spray. I am a little nervous about this because I'm not sure if this is enough batter for 2 cakes, but we will see. We're going to do it exactly how she says here. So you have to do half and half. And then in the recipe, it says to bake these for 35 to 45 minutes. At 350, and when checking, make sure that your tester comes out clean. These do seem pretty like thin to me. They do seem pretty thin to me, but we'll see how. I'm going to keep an eye on them just to make sure they don't overcook. We'll go from there. We'll see what happens. Okay, so once these come out of the oven and are finished baking, I will show you and give you a look at what they look like coming out of the oven. Okay, the cakes just came out of the oven. They were in the oven for exactly 35 minutes. I've checked them both. They both come out nice and clean. I noticed that these cakes have a sheen on them. That looks so nice. It was on the batter too. I'm going to let these cool on the stove for a bit, and once they're cool enough, we'll start making the icing, and then we'll put it all together. So the cakes are nice and cooled. As you can see, they're a little thinner than I expected, but I think this will still turn out great. So let's start with the icing. So we need, let's see here, butter first. So we need half a pound of butter. So that is half of this, approximately 1 cup. Half of this pound here. Just get a knife. Oop. I'm just going to chop it up, let it in smaller pieces here so it's easier to blend, easier to mix up, just like we did to the cake, cookie recipes in the previous video. This is room temperature butter. You don't want to try and make icing with cold butter. You're going to get chunks all through it. Okay, so now we need to whip this for 3 minutes until it's nice, light, and fluffy. So we're going to do that. Okay, I think that's fairly close. She said until light and fluffy, or like a light yellow color. So earlier, when I was mentioning about us making this recipe, I mentioned that it had cocoa powder and semi-sweet chocolate. It does not. It only has semi-sweet melted chocolate in this. Okay, so now we need to add an egg yolk. Let me get a smaller bowl here. Okay, so just the egg yolk, 1 egg yolk. Okay, and then we're supposed to beat that into the butter for another 3 minutes. Okay, I think that's good. Let me just scrape down the sides here. Okay, and then add the vanilla and the confectioner's sugar. So this takes 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And 1 1/4 cups of confectioner's sugar, powdered sugar. That's 1. About 1/4. Let me just make sure in my recipe here that that's what we needed to do. Okay, so that's right. So we're going to mix that in. Okay, now I need to add 2 teaspoons of strong coffee mixture here. You need to dissolve coffee mixture into 2 teaspoons of water. Okay. And let me just make sure here. Okay. And then now I have 6 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate here. Do not use chocolate chips. Chocolate chips have stabilizers in them. I used this kind here, Baker's chocolate. So I'm going to go melt this in the microwave and then we can add it to the mixture here. Okay, so I just melted the chocolate. I'm just trying to cool it off just a little bit. It doesn't say anything about cooling it off, so I don't want it to melt everything in here, the butter and everything. Let me see here. Yeah, it doesn't say anything about cooling it, but I'm going to try and cool it just a little bit here. So then we pour it right into the mixture here. This is 6 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate. I melted in the microwave. Get all of this in here. Okay. And then it says blend into the mixture until blended. So let's do that. Okay, let me scrape the sides here just so we get everything even. There's no half bits that are mixed here. I really thought that was going to melt the icing and it didn't. So I'm learning new things here today. Okay, I think that's good. This is what it looks like. So now let's put the cake together. Okay, I cleaned up just a little bit first. Let me get my cloth here. Okay. Okay, so let's put the bottom part. In her recipe it says put the bottom one down face first so that the flat part is on the top. We're going to spread a thin layer of this in the middle. It's not too... I'm just going to put a little bit on the bottom here to hold the cake in place. Not too much in the middle. If you do like a lot of icing, I would recommend maybe doubling this recipe. Oh, 1 minute, I gotta go take my cat off the counter. She just climbed on the counter. Okay, I'm back. Washed my hands. So the cakes are a lot thinner than I was anticipating. I think if I was to make this recipe again, because they didn't raise as much as I was expecting, I would say I would probably make it in a 9-inch pan and put the entire mixture into a 9-inch pan and then cut the cake into layers is probably what I would do next if I make this recipe again, which I more than likely will. We'll see how it tastes when we're done here. Okay, I think that's good. Now she said to put the top piece on with the rounded part on top. And then the rest of this we're going to do on top and on the sides. Just want to make sure I get all the icing out here because there's not very much in the bowl here. I'm very curious to taste this afterwards with the egg in it. Something I've never even thought of trying to do in a frosting recipe. Okay. So now we're just going to make it look pretty. Around the sides. This is where the artist in me comes out. I used to be a painter. I still paint occasionally, just not as often as I used to. So whenever I'm doing creative things like this, I tend to concentrate a little bit. If you hear my cat in the background, she's mad because I moved the chairs away from the table so she can't climb on the table. I'm still teaching her not to climb on surfaces. She's a baby. So all I'm doing is taking the excess from the top and moving it down the sides and filling in the gaps. But yeah, I think next time I will do this in a 9-inch pan. I think that would be a little better. And the cake would probably be a little fluffier as well, because it's I would just cut it in half, cut it in layers. But I wanted to try all of these recipes exactly how she has them, just so we can taste them. Last side here. After we're done this, we'll give it a taste and render a verdict here. Just trying to make this look as nice as possible. I got it on the plate a little bit, but I don't think that matters. I'm trying to even out the amount of icing on each side. The cake's a little lopsided, but that's okay. It's just for us. It's not a birthday cake or anything. Okay, so I think I'm just going to give it a little design, just to make it look nice. Maybe just kind of do a little swirl or something. Doesn't need to look perfect. You could also have used a piping tip for this, but I don't think that's necessary right now. Just covering a couple spots where I dug a little too deep. Okay, I think I'm going to leave the sides plain. I think that looks beautiful. Here, I'll give you a close-up look, and then we'll cut a piece and taste it. Okay, here's the close-up look of the cake. Looks pretty good. Now let's taste it. Okay, I'm just going to cut a little piece off the corner here. This is what it looks like. Hopefully you can see that. Inside the cake. Looks fairly good. Okay, let's taste this. Okay. It's not bad. It's pretty good. The icing has a really creamy texture to it. It's like melt in your mouth kind of creamy texture. I'm wondering if that's from the egg yolk. It's pretty good. The inside tastes delicious. I think the next time I make this though, I'm going to make it in a 9-inch pan, the entire recipe, and then just cut the layers. But overall, this recipe is pretty good. So I hope you guys try it. So this is where I'm going to end the video for today, guys. I really do hope you guys try the recipe. It was delicious and very interesting techniques that I tried today. And I hope to see you guys next time. Bye.